Today's guest is a fashion designer, product developer, and a teacher. She has over 15 years of experience in the fashion field, studied fashion design at the London College of Fashion in London, and has a proven focus on the relationship between fashion and production trends. For the past 8 years, she's been working with startups and small fashion brands to learn about the industry and take their design to production. She's learned about every step along the way. She knows exactly what they need, both by helping others and also by having her own fashion brand for 6 years before she had children. Please welcome Annette to the show. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be
I
here.
know. I'm excited about talk about fun stuff, fashion. I mean, what could be funner than that? I mean,
Yeah,
you are a
everyone's
wealth of knowledge. I'm excited to pick your brain. So, tell me what drew you to the fashion industry, because I think that's such an interesting line of work to go into.
it's quite a long story or long back because it started, I think, already in my pre-teens. Uh, I used to sit with my best friend and just like draw fashion designs, and we pretended we were fashion designers, and I was very innocent, but it always stuck with me. So after that, I liked art and I liked drawing. But I grew up in Sweden, and in Sweden at the time, now it's a big fashion industry, but at the time it was H&M and a few other Swedish brands, but it wasn't very big, so it was a bit scary. And it wasn't very much education within fashion. So I started with graphic design, but that fashion still kept nagging at me. So when I moved to London, I was like, nope, I'm going into fashion, and I did. So that was it.
That's amazing. What's it like running your own fashion brand? Like, what are the challenges associated with that? Because I'm sure there's like lots of standard things that all of us entrepreneurs face, but like in the fashion industry, there's got to be some pretty specific stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like one of the things that I think anyone in any entrepreneurial business has is obviously you have to wear a lot of hats. That I think that was like the major challenge. And when I had my brand, internet wasn't probably as good as it is now, so you couldn't just YouTube everything. But I think from the fashion perspective, even though I had already worked as a product developer in the industry and I had factory contacts, it was hard to get your product exactly as it should be. And I think that's somewhere where the brands I work with today, they all think it's a very easy process. You think you just have a design and then the factory makes it and it comes out perfect. And that's not the process. So even though I had the experience, I did make a few faux pas with my production.
Well, and that's got to be a huge challenge because there is so much information. And I feel like there's so many, like in the YouTube space, it's like there's so many people that kind of started on YouTube, they have an Instagram following, and then they create their own like fashion line, which I don't even know if it can be, if a couple sweatshirts are considered a fashion line, but they start with this merch line and then they're going to production. And it's like, there has got to be, I mean, there's so much information on the internet, but there is probably so many ins and outs and challenges with taking, your design to production. And, I know that that's something that you can help people with. So walk us through kind of what that process is like.
Yeah, it is a longer process than anyone ever thinks. I mean, when you look at big brands, you always think, oh yeah, like they do a season and then another season and 6 months, and then you get the fast fashion where obviously it's faster. But I think even though we have that seasonal in our bones, when I speak to any one of my new companies, they always go, oh yeah, I want it in 2 months, and I'm like, no, back up. We first need to design it. I mean, first we need to even have our customer profile and know who we're designing for, and then do the designing and researching the trends. And also like all these different areas and customer areas have different personal trends as well. Like if you do swimwear or if you want to do a very niche product, that's a whole different thing. So you need to do that very thoroughly, and then you design. And with designs, you also need to make patterns. And most factories today, they can make the pattern for you, but you still need to give them a size chart, which gives all the measurements for a physical paper pattern. And then you start your sampling process, and you need to look at fabric swatches, pick the right fabrics, and then approve lab dips, which is small color examples that they make from Pantones. And yeah, if you have a print, you've got strike offs, and that might be wrong, so you might have to see another one. So all that process just like takes months and months to just like, okay, this was right. Okay, tick. This was wrong. Can you change this? I want the eyes on this print to be blue, not green. And then you need to see it again. And then, yeah, sampling, just fitting a garment is one big thing. I mean, big companies have whole departments for just fitting and making sure that it fits right. You get the first sample, you're going to be shocked, even for big companies, that they usually don't always fit very nicely. So you need to tweak all the pattern pieces and tell the factories where to change them, and then you go to the next step and you start again with the next sample. And I mean, a normal process is about 3 samples, but there are even for big companies where I've worked, where you get up to 8 samples because you think it's a really good style. Most of the times they get dropped beforehand, but can happen. If you're lucky. I mean, I'm doing some swimwear at the moment for a really nice Australian brand, and I think if we're lucky, we might actually pull it off in 2 samples because the factory is really, really good and specialist. But it's even with factories, you can't exactly know, because it also depends on the expectation of the customer and the brand. So yeah, it's a long process. So I recommend 6 months, but if you use experts like me or other product developers, I would say more a product developer than a designer, you can speed it up. But yeah, 6 months definitely, I think, is a recommendable time.
Well, and how has that changed too with everything that we've gone through in the last couple of years? I'm sure
Oh
that there
yeah.
was probably like a lot of that stuff that was done in person, it's now shifted.
Absolutely. And also a lot of the COVID affected so many factories. There's so many factories that had to shut down. I mean, in China, they were shut for I don't know how long, and it still happens. I've got a Portuguese factory that had to shut down the other week because they didn't have enough staff because of COVID. And yeah, so that has slowed everything down, and not only from the fashion industry and the factories, even like the shipping, because if you produce somewhere abroad, the shipping has been very delayed and also have gone up a lot in price, and now due to petrol as well. So yeah, it's all been affected. So it can sometimes take longer now.
Well, and have you noticed how have the trends changed as well?
Oh yes, obviously, because of these nice Zoom calls where we dress lovely at the top and we're in a joggers. I'm not in my joggers now, but I could have been, right? Uh, so that has brought a lot of athleisure into the fashion. So nowadays, even even the big brands that never even considered to do that do it. And yeah, lots of small brands are coming up with that. And I think because people are wearing more informal clothes, if you're a formal brand, you need to shift a little bit so that you get your margins in. But also one thing I've noticed, which is quite interesting, is that since there's so much more kind of virtual reality and NFTs and all of that world, there's a lot of demand for fashion designers who can design for NFT, for example, which is like, I mean, I would say maybe you need a fashion designer combined with a programmer because it's a completely different thing. But yeah, it's a whole new thing and it's changing. And also the big brands are doing a lot more like online virtual reality shops and fitting rooms. So yeah, it's a lot of changes in all areas.
Oh my gosh, that NFT, like blockchain, like all that stuff is fascinating, but like mind-boggling at the same time. And it's kind of exciting to see. I had no idea that it had like gone into the fashion industry too, but it makes total sense that it would. And you're right. You probably need, the people that have the mind for the fashion, but also the people that can program that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I think. Because I have had requests, but I'm like, I mean, I can give you a design to give to someone, but yeah, I'm not techie in that sense. I'm technical in my patterns.
Wow. Well, and so if someone comes to you, maybe they're not at the NFT stage, but
Yeah.
if someone has a fashion brand and they really want to help it grow, how do you assist them with that?
Yeah, I mean, because this is where I think I have a lot of strength, because I had my own fashion brand, so I've studied a lot of marketing and sales, and I've been doing trade shows, and I've done all the little steps that you do, and wholesale and sale direct to customer. But also, I think being an entrepreneur, I mean, I'm studying all the time to learn more, to grow my own business. So yeah, so I give a lot of input, not only in the design to production, I also give, especially for startups, small tips of how you can utilize your stock for longer than a season, for example, which is a big one, because obviously you have to order a certain amount of clothes, but when you're a young brand, you might not have the customer base to sell all that in just one season. But there are ways to repurpose it, or clever marketing ideas you can come up with. And yeah, I usually try, and even though that's not what I'm usually on one-on-one hired for, but I love that, and I love all my brands, so I always have clever ideas. I'm like, you could do that. Maybe for marketing, you could say this is a repeat coming back. It's was very good seller last season, so we're bringing it back. But there's so many little tweaks you can do.
Yeah, like a vault piece, and then people get
Mm,
excited about it.
exactly.
What are some other challenges when you're helping fashion brands grow? Because I feel like there's a lot of things that are probably very similar to
Mm.
a different business, but I'm sure there's probably very specific things in regards to fashion brands that have their own unique challenges.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is, especially when you're starting as a small brand, is more, I would say, see it as a passion. Find a niche which is a little bit different. If you just want, like, I just want to do tops for women in their 30s, that's very broad, and it's going to be harder, like with any business in these days, I think, to sell, because who is your customer? So I always think, if you, and I can see that from all my brands, if you narrow down and have something more specific, like someone I've worked with who wanted to do medical scrubs because they were in the medical industry and they knew exactly what was missing and what they needed to add, or where pockets should sit because they worked in the industry. I think like that is a brilliant way of going about it. Try and figure out somewhere where you know there is a gap and you can fill it, and then you can target that customer much better.
Well, and it's you're solving a specific problem because you
Mm.
yourself have had that problem, especially if you work in the medical field and you're like, "Why do they put this pocket here? Like, that's the most inconvenient pocket position ever." That's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I think that's there's so many of these brands coming up. I think actually it has come a bit from COVID and everyone staying at home, but so that people started thinking of what can I do, and people were in more financial strain and stuff, and trying to figure out. I think I see a lot more passion businesses, and I think that is the way to go forward for a fashion brand.
Well, and if someone is thinking about, going into that fashion, like if they are, an influencer or they have, a large following on YouTube or if they just want to make their business fashion, what is one piece of advice that you would give to them?
I would say the first thing I would do is to speak to someone in the industry so that you understand it, because the fashion industry is a little bit old-fashioned in a few ways, and it always shocks all my clients. But it's a bit old-fashioned, and there's set ways, and I think also like to figure out timelines and how to do it and the money behind it, because you have the two options. Yes, you could just go and say, oh, I'm going to drop ship something that I found on Alibaba, but you have no idea what you're sending to your customer, really. And I don't think a lot of people even contemplate that aspect, that it could come and it could be something that is really not very nice fitting or very good quality. But that is the reality. And I think doing your homework before you go into it, so that you can go into it with like all guns blazing.
Absolutely. Now, you have a special offer for our listeners that you have got a Facebook group that has got some pretty amazing stuff going on in it. So tell us more about that.
Yes, I am building a program, so it's called Fashion Design Tribe, and it's to help startup brands. But it's a way for me to give more of my knowledge to more people than my one-to-one customers. So it will be like a 6 month program where you go from start to production and your launch of your brand. So we will cover the production and the design process, but it will also cover sales and marketing, and so that you can, and sustainability, which is a good big thing today, so that you can build your brand during this program with the help of me. And it will also have coaching sessions and classes and lessons that you have access to, and Q&As. So and for my Facebook group, that's a free Facebook group. So for anyone who is interested in learning about fashion startups, I am giving away free information in there about different production tips and different design tips and trends I've seen. So, and that is at facebook.com groups of groups fashion design tribe. And yeah, we welcome any fashion novice, fashion startups, and fashion designers who know what they're doing too. So
That's exciting because you're taking this wealth of knowledge that you have, as well as other guests that you're bringing in, to really help people not make mistakes that you've made, some potential pitfalls that I'm sure exist, that you're like, hey, watch out for this one, because this one's one you could fall into. And that's what's so great about this group, is bringing everyone together so everybody can learn and decide, is this something that I want to do? And if it is, how to take those next steps. So I'm so excited for people to check it out. And I'll be sure to link it in the show notes as well, so people can have a quick link that they can just click on it and add themselves to it. I'm so excited that you were here to share all your knowledge with us. Thank you so much for carving time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
thank you so much, Jill, for having me. It's been very exciting. And I do listen to your podcast, so I recommend everyone to listen to all the episodes. There's so many good ones.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No worries. Thank you for having me. It's been great.